Today we are locking in on one very specific day, November 19th. It was a day that I think perfectly captures the tension in the 2025 economy.
It really does. This was the day the U.S. markets, after 4 straight days of some pretty intense selling pressure, they finally fought back.
Just a modest rebound, but a rebound nonetheless.
And that modest rebound is what's so fascinating because it forces us to zoom in. We've gone through a stack of reports, financial filings, trading data, fixed income analyses, all to understand the drivers of that single 24-hour period.
So our mission for you today is to unpack what's hidden just beneath those headline numbers.
Exactly.
And the central conflict, the thing that makes you realize this isn't just another trading day, is the split-screen view. On one side, the indexes snap their losing streak, which suggests stability.
But that stability, it's really masking this deep structural fight. You had this massive, almost overwhelming tech optimism.
And then this really clear, undeniable pessimism from the retail sector. So I guess the question we have to answer is, how? How can two huge bellwether companies, we're talking NVIDIA and Target, send such completely opposite signals on the same day, and yet the market still manages to grind out a gain?
This is where it gets really interesting. I mean, those conflicting signals, the AI boom versus the cautious consumer, that should have created extreme whiplash in the market.
It should have.
But what our sources show is that the stability we saw wasn't really driven by either of those corporate extremes. It was the bond market. The bond market was trying to price in a cautious, steady path from the Fed, basically ignoring all the noise.
The sound of the market just refusing to commit.
That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, so let's start with the good news, that immediate relief, the equity snapback. I mean, after 4 days in the red, seeing green on the screen must have been a huge relief for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. The gains were subtle, but they counted. The Dow was up just 0.1%, maybe 40 points or so. The S&P 500 rose 0.4%, and that was the number that officially snapped the streak.
And if you're wondering where the real energy came from, you just had to look at tech.
100%. The NASDAQ composite climbed 0.6%, and it was almost entirely fueled by one narrative, one stock.
NVIDIA.
NVIDIA.
The AI engine was just driving the whole car that day.
Yeah.
Its shares were already climbing during the day just on pure anticipation, but then the results came out after the close.
And they delivered a spectacular, expectation-shattering beat. I mean, it validates the entire AI infrastructure thesis, at least for now. They beat on revenue. They posted an adjusted EPS of $1.30 versus the $1.25 expected.
But there was one number that just stood out, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah. The number that really shifts the debate entirely is data center sales, $30.8 billion.
Wow.
And that reflects a colossal 94% year-over-year growth. This is the metric that kind of silences the arguments about NVIDIA being overvalued.
Okay, let's stop right there. 94% growth is huge, but help put that $30.8 billion in context. In the grand scheme of things, how significant is that one revenue stream? Is this really a new industrial revolution, or is it just a massive but very concentrated spending spree?
That is the critical question, and I'd argue it's not just growth, it's infrastructure growth. If you look back at other tech cycles, like, say, the late 90s internet backbone build-out, you see these same kinds of massive concentrated spending spikes on the hardware that enables everything else.
So it's like laying the railroad tracks.
Precisely. That $30.8 billion tells us that every major corporation, every cloud provider, every government is in this massive accelerating arms race to deploy AI. It's not consumer spending, it's corporate investment.
So you got the corporate world betting the farm on the future. And at the exact same time, we get this sobering reality check from the American shopper, courtesy of Target.
Target was the concrete countersignal, and it hit the whole retail sector like a lead balloon. Their Q3 results? Well, they showed net sales actually declining 1.5%.
Down to $25.3 billion. That's a significant reversal.
It is, and the pressure was all over their margins. GAAP EPS dropped to $1.51 from $1.85 the year before. Adjusted EPS fell 4%.
But what was the real red flag? Was it the numbers themselves or the story behind them?
It was the commentary. Target specifically cited consumer caution and persistent economic headwinds. They slashed their forward guidance even while they're planning store upgrades.
Which means they don't see this softness ending anytime soon.
Exactly. And the disparity is just glaring. You have corporate leaders pouring billions into AI data centers, while the actual consumers those companies ultimately serve are clearly pulling back on clothes, electronics, home goods.
And the interesting thing is, globally, markets kind of follow that tentative U.S. stability.
Right.
The Nikkei was up 0.5%. European indices gained 0.5 to 1%.
It shows that the positive signal from U.S. earnings from NVIDIA outweighed the consumer weakness, at least for a day. But that weakness is still a big flashing red light.
Absolutely. Which is why we need to step away from the noise of the stock market.
And look at the calm, steady anchor, the bond market.
Right, if the stock market's having a personality crisis.
The bond market is the clinical psychiatrist.
So tell us what that stability in Treasuries says about where the Fed's head is at.
Well, the story of November 19th in fixed income is it's range-bound stability. And that is so significant. Despite all that drama in equities, U.S. Treasury yields barely moved.
The 10-year yield, the big one everyone watches, it dipped just a single basis point, slipped to 4.12% from 4.13%.
A tiny move. And you saw that reflected on the short end, too. The 2-year yield fell 2 basis points to 3.58%.
But here's where it gets interesting, a little subtle. The 30-year yield actually went up a basis point to 4.74%.
And that subtle move is the real insight. It tells us something about the shape of the yield curve. When the short end falls a bit but the long end rises a bit, that suggests a very subtle steepening.
What does that mean in plain English?
It signals that while traders are feeling a little more confident that short-term rates are stabilizing, less fear of sudden hike, they still have some underlying inflation concerns or long-term growth worries. That's why that long-term rate is a little higher.
And what kept the bond market so anchored? I mean, we've seen so much volatility earlier this year.
It was a few things coming together. First, the market was still digesting the latest Fed minutes. And those minutes showed a pretty robust debate going on among policymakers about when to start cutting rates.
And the sources gave us a really specific data point on that, right? Rate cut probabilities for December were basically a coin flip.
A coin flip, right around 50 to 60%, that is the definition of uncertainty, and it's just enough to keep the bond market balanced.
And I assume the stock market rebound played a part.
It did. It helped reduce what we call flight to safety demand for bonds. You know, when stocks are tanking, big money rushes into safe assets like treasuries. That demand pushes bond prices up and yields down.
But since stocks recovered, that pressure was off.
The pressure was off. And you have to remember, this stability is coming after that big disruption we saw back in April, that tariff-related spike where the 10-year almost hit 4.5%.
So the fact that the market is so steady now suggests a lot of confidence in the Fed's ability to manage things.
The takeaway is that the bond market is pricing in a very careful, very cautious, very data-dependent Fed. It's ignoring the Silicon Valley euphoria and the Main Street pain. It's the great equalizer.
But that raises a question. Does that stability create its own risk? If everyone is priced for caution, what happens if the Fed suddenly surprises us?
Absolutely. It's a double-edged sword. It means that if the next big economic report, say consumer confidence, suddenly tips the scales one way or the other, you could see a really rapid, almost violent repricing in the bond market. Stability like this often comes right before volatility.
Okay, so let's move on. What did all this mean for global money flows and, maybe more importantly for you, the saver, with money in the bank?
Well, the global liquidity implication is fascinating. Even modest yield declines can enhance global liquidity. They lower the cost of borrowing. So when U.S. yields soften just a little bit, it makes cross-border investment more attractive.
And where does that money tend to go?
It often bolsters emerging market flows. The yield difference between safe U.S. bonds and riskier assets gets wider, making EM debt or stocks look more appealing. But of course, the uncertainty back in the U.S. still tempers that enthusiasm a bit.
You mentioned that Treasury liquidity metrics like bid-ask spreads recovered quickly after that April disruption. For the listener, why do those spreads matter?
It's a great question. Think of the bid-ask spread as the cost of trading. A narrow spread means the market is deep and efficient. You can make huge trades without moving the price. A wide spread suggests there's panic, that the market is thin.
So the fact that they narrowed again is a good sign.
It shows the plumbing of the financial system is robust, and that's really foundational to overall market health.
Okay, let's bring it home to the everyday person. Money market accounts, MMAs, they depend directly on these short-term rates.
They do. And those key short-term rates held firm. The federal funds rate was at 3.88%, 3-month T-bills at 3.78%. And that is why your MMA is still such a reliable savings vehicle.
Right. That 3.88% is basically the floor that's underpinning the 4% to 4.5% yield you're seeing in a high-yield money market account. If the Fed cuts, that yield drops almost overnight.
That's the direct link. So because of that slight dip in Treasury yields we saw on the 19th, the implication for you, the saver, is that you might see a minor adjustment downward in your MMA yield. We're talking maybe 5 to 10 basis points over time.
So it's a small headwind for savers,
Right.
but a small benefit for borrowers.
It's the constant trade-off. It's that subtle, slow shift of the scales between savers and borrowers, all driven by a tiny move in the 10-year yield.
All right, so in our final section, let's look at the key signals that define the end of this trading day.
You saw that tentative stabilization across all risk assets. The VIX index, which is sometimes called the market's fear gauge, it eased off a bit, a direct response to the equity rebound.
And to NVIDIA's results, I imagine.
Of course. And that brings us right back to the great AI bubble debate of 2025. NVIDIA's monstrous earnings, they temporarily quieted the most acute fears. The sources we looked at suggest this tilted the evidence toward short-term recovery potential. The market just breathed this collective sigh of relief.
Deciding that, yes, the demand is real, at least for a few more quarters.
For now, yes. But the experts are still fiercely divided on sustainability. Some analysts view these recent dips as healthy corrections, but others are still sounding the alarm, saying corporate spending just can't justify these valuations forever.
And you saw the risk-on mood elsewhere, too.
You did. Broader risk assets showed that pause in selling pressure. Bitcoin was hovering robustly around $93,000, which signals that speculative capital was willing to come back off the sidelines.
Believing the immediate disaster scenario had been avoided.
Exactly. And what stands out from all this is just the adaptability of the markets in 2025. There's a real resilience there, underpinned by the Fed's tools and steady liquidity, but we have to keep coming back to that core tension.
The gap between the AI giants and the struggling consumer.
That is the fundamental conflict of the economy right now.
So to summarize our deep dive into November 19th, the market staged a really necessary recovery. It stopped a 4-day slide. And that recovery was almost entirely powered by NVIDIA's strength.
Right. It's $30 billion data center growth. And that happened despite the really clear consumer weakness we saw from a company like Target.
Meanwhile, the bond market just signaled cautious equilibrium. It refused to choose a side.
And that stability is so critical. It supports the global financial plumbing, and importantly for you, it keeps those money market yields reliable, even if a small downward drift is probably coming.
The whole day really just highlights this massive structural disagreement in the economy. Businesses are spending billions on transformative tech,
while the typical consumer is pulling back on discretionary goods. And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to mull over. Target's weak results point to clear headwinds for the average household. NVIDIA's success is all about massive corporate spending.
So the question is, how long can that corporate spending on AI, which, by the way, promises efficiency and maybe even job displacement, how long can that sustain the entire market's momentum if the actual consumer, who historically drives 2/3 of the economy, is consistently pulling back?
That is the central structural question. That's what will define the economy through the end of this year and into the next.
We'll be watching the upcoming consumer confidence data very closely to see which side of that tension eventually has to give. Until next time, keep digging deeper.